It's honestly scary how fast the last 15 years have flown by, but looking back, we've arguably lived through the golden age of gaming. From the indie explosions of the early 2000s to the hyper-realistic masterpieces we play today, this era has given us stories that changed our lives. But if I had to pick just one game that defined every single year, what would the list look like? I went back through my library to find the 15 titles that made this decade and a half worth every second. Let's take a trip down memory lane. Kicking this list off is God of War 3. This game was one of those games that for me personally changed everything. In terms of coming off the first two games, which were already great to begin with, God of War 3 really stepped it up in every regard. The gameplay improved on everything we already knew about the series, fully loading out Kratos' movement and giving him so many more mechanical avenues. The gameplay was probably better than a lot of titles on this list, purely because of how much fun there is to be had with mixing up the weapon usage and everything else the game has to offer. The game's story is miles better than any of the prior entries, and it's probably today the most badass one to me. The game looked great, still does, and hell, I've played through it on the PlayStation 4 recently, and I still found it amazing to behold. And given that the original release was in 2010, it's pretty impressive. God of War 3 was also one of my favorite games of all time. And I like the new games, sure, but this one right here was dialed in for somebody like me. If you never had the chance, pick up the remastered version. It's out there, it's worth playing. Next up, we have Batman Arkham City. This for me is the magnum opus of the Batman Arkham franchise. Arkham Origins I thought was a decent game, but it wasn't developed by Rocksteady though. And Arkham Knight I just wasn't really that impressed with. Outside of some of the tank gameplay and mission design choices, Arkham City is their best work, primarily because of how grand the scope of the story was. Arkham Asylum, a brilliant game on its own, released just a year before, was Rocksteady's chance to show what they could do, and if you're asking me, this was both to create that awesome gameplay and build on it. And the best part, they dialed it in with the combat. And when you throw in the incredible cast of characters and missions, this was the right game for me. Arkham City also has what I think is the best Batman voiceover work from the late, great Kevin Conroy. This was him at his best. Whenever I think of this game, as good as it is, I always think of him walking on those metal steel doors and announcing his presence to all the gangsters, while the Batman theme plate man is one of the best representations of the character. Man was a legend. The designers were legendary, and if you haven't had the chance to play Arkham City, do so. Personally, I prefer the art style of the original release. The remaster looks a little bit too similar to Arkham Knight for me, but I'd still pick this game up at full price any day. Next up is Far Cry 3. Fast forwarding a little bit to when today, Ubisoft had completely destroyed everything about themselves. This right here was the moment where video games were, really, in my eyes, shifting toward the open world standard. I was firmly in the camp that wanted to see less open world games and much more linear story-driven titles. I was afraid that people like myself, who loved these single-player games like God of War or Batman, were just not going to survive and have these games. It looked like the future was all open world, and games like Far Cry 3 made that future a lot easier to accept. It borrowed a lot from Fallout 3, which is a whole lot in the weapon drop departments. It stopped quick scoping, which was the bane of my existence in Call of Duty 4. But beyond that, the story here, the narrative, really caught me off guard. That opening scene with the character, Voss especially, it really set the tone for this game. Today, one of my favorite game openings of all time. The supporting cast backed it up with a great gameplay loop. While I lost interest a little bit many years after, and certainly around the time Far Cry 6 came out, which, let me be clear, that game sucked. I realized without games like Far Cry 3, we wouldn't have gotten a lot of the games that I did enjoy. Mad Max, Dying Light, Sunset Overdrive, to name a few. Far Cry 3, it did have an impact, and for me, it's one of my favorite games of all time, and truthfully, it is absolutely the best of the Far Cry franchise. Next up, we've got The Last of Us. Look, I'm about to get raked across the claws for this, but I honestly don't care anymore. When The Last of Us came out, people in the film industry got very starry-eyed over the cinematic quality of video games. And I love the idea of the two merging, but the story behind The Last of Us, not just in the story but in the presentation, it made them a perfect fit to me. The sound design, the movement tech, the graphics, this was a technical masterpiece, and everything under the hood here was really done well. And look, before it was expected, truthfully, this was Naughty Dog's magnum opus, or at the very least, the most serious acting work to be done by the company. And this game did what it needed to be at what I believe is still the top of the studio's output. I love the Uncharted games, but the game looked cartoony compared to this. But this game was built from the ground to present a more real-world scenario. And while it is a little flanderized looking back from 2010 to now, considering games from 2025 are far more advanced and have technically caught up with serious acting. But you have to remember, when this game came out, large portions of the gaming industry thought this kind of performance and quality was just not possible. But Naughty Dog proved them wrong. Next up, we've got Middle-earth, Shadow of Mordor. Sure, a lot of you know about Shadow of Mordor, but sadly it doesn't have the same gravitas today as it did back in 2014. And a lot of its lackluster sequel coverage has not helped it. When it came out and got its Game of the Year edition, it was another open-world game made by Monolith, and was the first game for me that used the Batman Arkham Asylum franchise combat style, and did a fantastic job with it. In fact, it made it slightly slower and more impactful, which, in my opinion, was a great change. Shadow of Mordor, Cold Hard, brought nothing to the table when it came to the enemy types, which were all orcs. But it made up for it in spades with its Nemesis system, which delivered a dynamic ecosystem to the game, something that nobody expected at all. Its procedural nature meant that there was very little crossover between everyone's playthroughs. And it was perfectly the right kind of gameplay element to deliver replayability. You fight a higher level orc, maybe you kill them, maybe they run away. If they run away, then they return later on. They could have a scar along their body, maybe some deformations, a hate matrix against the player, or tactics that they could have developed to become far more formidable. The system was both in-depth and really well integrated into the story and gameplay loop, which was fun as hell to begin with. The only thing holding the game back was the Nemesis system. If you're asking me, the Nemesis system made this game perfect. And now that the Nemesis system is currently locked up behind Warner Brothers copyrights and can't really be used by anyone else, this game is a standalone that really can't be replicated by anybody else unless Warner Brothers choose to do so. This was really a one-off in that regard, and sadly because of that, it makes it special. Next up is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The last 15 years have been incredible in video games, and The Witcher 3 is one of those unique games. I remember watching friends on an Xbox One basically get stuck in loads of animations where the game would even crash. I remember the frame rate dropping to embarrassing levels, and the pop-in could get to insane levels. Still, everybody played it. The game was an absolute mess, but folks wanted Geralt's adventure. They had imagined it would have looked like an improved version of The Witcher 2, but instead, what CD Projekt gave us was one of the best open-world role-playing games of all time. Yes, sure, I have some thoughts about the team. I can go on about how dated the storytelling feels in 2025 compared to 10 years ago, and yes, the bugs were actually pretty big at launch. But I did enjoy every second of The Witcher 3 when it was playing correctly. And 9 times out of 10, you know what? It was running just fine for me. There was always the possibility of seeing something that made me laugh or a quest that made me gasp. And when you're adventuring up in the frigid northern kingdoms and then making your way to Skellige, it was as if you were entering a unique microcosm of the rest of the Outer Lands. And when you went down to Toussaint, it was a whole new realm to behold. It's just a game that, for many years, I still played, and it got 2 amazing DLC expansions that really deserve more merit. But if you are going to play this in 2025 as it is currently, then understand that this is a game from a different era. While the writing may be a little bit outdated, it is still an absolute classic. A game that has earned its place among some of the best. Next up, we've got Uncharted 4, A Thief's End. Listen, if we're being honest, Uncharted 4, A Thief's End is a game of diminishing returns, and I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just that it really is so immersive and so focused on narrative to the extent that the gameplay takes a little bit of a back seat. Sure, and with each new playthrough, you're getting a little more familiar and know exactly what's coming, but on that first play or on that second play, depending on your playback, it feels amazing from the beginning to the end, Uncharted 4 is crafted into perfect cohesion and perfectly delivers on the franchise and series. Full transparency, I never got the sense that anything in the game wasn't intentional or purposeful toward telling the story, and I never got the sense that it was trying to bore me. Each gimmick, setting, or action sequence felt completely different from any other game, and while it never completely came away from its Uncharted-based formula, which is a lot of rest-stop, platforming sections, followed by big action sequences, followed by shootouts, this game just felt completely different. And it was, speaking frankly, better than the prior Uncharted games, which were already great. It built off those games, yes, and provided what I would best call the Indiana Jones fixation of gaming. Nobody does this kind of romantic action adventuring better than Naughty Dog, and while the ending itself leaves me with a bit of a bittersweet taste on the series, I would say that Uncharted 4: A Thief's End is a necessity for anyone who actually likes that kind of movie-style video game experience. Next up, we've got Super Mario Odyssey. Let me be very clear, 2017 is an absolutely ridiculous year. Picking anything for this year, I'm leaving out tons of games I love as much as Odyssey. I love Horizon Zero Dawn, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, absolutely incredible. Assassin's Creed Origins was a true return to form. Life is Strange Before the Storm is a game that I think could take the spot. And I am cheating instantly by saying that it is shared with Super Mario Odyssey, but it needs to be put on the list. Let me be very clear, this game is basically perfect. But also in the sense that during its time, I would not have believed that any game could have this level of quality. It's not like one thing really blows me away, everything just looks like it was made to be part of a perfect game. The mood, the colors, the speed, the controls, the constant ramping up of creative and interesting new ways that the game challenged you or surprised you. It feels like a Super Mario universe in this, where everything adheres to the principles of movement and strengths of a jumping, flying character. And look, this game is fun as hell. I keep saying this over and over again reading this script, but every single aspect of this game in one way or another has been mentioned to not be like any other series. It doesn't really seem like it's part of the continuation of Super Mario, but it is a game so uniquely of this quality that it needs to exist. Nintendo did a great job, and if you have never played this game, do it now. Next up, we've got Red Dead Redemption 2. So Red Dead is kind of on the other end of the spectrum. It's a game where everybody I know still debates it who has played it anyway. I remember playing it, and I remember being enthralled by tons of it, particularly the unsolved storytelling, the procedures of keeping your player warm by putting on a coat, setting up a camp. There's a lot to enjoy mechanically in Red Dead Redemption 2, but at the same time, a lot of it has become frustrating as time goes by with mechanics that, for me, just didn't hold up in other playthroughs. Also, I think it was a little too rigid for some aspects of it. If you enjoy it, you enjoy it, and if you don't, then you don't. Because it doesn't really go too far off what it wants to do. Red Dead Redemption 2 is simply what it is. It doesn't care what you want, and it's gonna do that whether you enjoy it or not. It's an interesting scenario where there is nothing in the game underdeveloped. Truth be told, everything in this game is intentional, well-directed, and diamond-focused for the next thing it tries to accomplish. The first Red Dead really revealed Rockstar to be masters of this open-world storytelling genre. Red Dead Redemption 2 is proof they are. It is a much longer game, it is a much slower game, and it is dependent on you buying into exactly what it's trying to do. Not everybody's going to, but if you do, this is an absolutely beautiful game. With a world that just stops you and makes you feel like you are a part of the old Wild West, it's the best of that, if that's what you want. Next up is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. Look, I'm just going to say it. Sekiro is the best out of the more modern From Software games. I know, I love Elden Ring and Bloodborne 2 and our other strong contenders for the spot, but Sekiro just manages to combine so many great things to make the gameplay experience so perfect for me. And it is one of those games that makes you be patient and makes you pay attention. It makes you learn the gameplay before you can really get anywhere. At first, countering seems impossible, not something you're ever going to get the hang of. But over time, you do get the hang of it, and it becomes muscle memory. And learning sweet sword locks, when to parry, and when to do damage, this is a game about learning how to react quickly, effectively, and accurately. In some ways, it actually reminds me of Hollow Knight, which is designed as something that is micro and macro, very open with a lot to do, likable NPCs, and a surprisingly moving narrative for a Souls-esque game. But it's really the gameplay loop that I think deserves the most merit. It feels unique, very authentic to the era of games it's attempting to portray, while managing to contribute something original mechanically as well. And when a game manages to be a throwback and at the same time be a taste of something new, it is an absolute paradoxical joy, and I love Sekiro for it. Next up, we've got Hades. In general, roguelikes aren't typically my thing. It took a while to really get into them. Enter the Gungeon is probably my favorite game of this kind of game. But look, I really like the games that have a story. Supergiant Games, specifically, the team behind Bastion and Transistor, are known for putting out quality games. But when they get Hades, I was really late to the party. And when I finally did play it, apparently I was very wrong. Their mastery over captivating and creative stories is undeniable. And in general, I think that mastery over games essentially knocked this out of the park. Not just in combination with action-packed isometric combat that loads the player with tons of fun uses of items and weapons, but the progression itself, meaning that the systems of the roguelike synergize with the storytelling. They don't just execute, but they at least do something new that feels like a refreshing take on the roguelike genre, and it makes it very inclusive to people like myself. That's not to mention the crisp hand-drawn art, the incredible soundtrack, and well-written cast of characters. Hades can get its hooks in gamers, even if you don't normally like them, but if you do like them, this is probably the ultimate inclusion in your library. Hades is undoubtedly a peak of what roguelikes should and could be. Next up, it's It Takes Two. So It Takes Two is a very unique co-op game that really was just designed to require both players to work together to be successful. Communication and collaboration are what power this game, particularly puzzle-solving sections. But the creativity of the level design, combined with the charming narrative and central characters, really keeps emotional momentum and buy-in going. It Takes Two is, if we're real, a relationship drama. The decline of the relationship between the two characters' parents affects a lot of it, and it introduces them into the context of the game along with their daughter, turning them into dolls that have to traverse these imaginative worlds together. Each world introduces new mechanics that both players have to figure out how to use to be successful. New gimmicks are introduced on basically every level, and it just has excellent pacing that keeps the experience fresh. If you are playing this as a hardcore gamer with somebody who's never touched a controller before, this is a context-sensitive game of trust that really can serve for both people a need for good teaching and a need for good listening. It's a strange one to say, but it really lays bare in a lot of ways what can be great and what can be dysfunctional about a relationship. That's not to say you're gonna hate your co-op partner, but if you're one of those people who has to test things, it's gonna call that bluff. It's a really brilliantly weird game that really doesn't have that much to do with what the quote-unquote casual gamer looks like. It looks like something that is meant to appeal to the most broad possible audience, but underneath it, it's a game through and through, and I really appreciate that. Next up is A Plague Tale Requiem. This is probably going to be the most controversial choice for this spot, because obviously we had a lot of other games in 2022 as well. But in my book, Requiem really is a significant step forward from its predecessor. It's not just an improvement, it's a bold reimagining of what we thought was possible for this game. Rather than simply give us another installment or a direct sequel, they push the boundaries of both gameplay and narrative. The story is deeper and more engaging, the characters are more complex and relatable. It takes it to a whole new level. Requiem is a lot bigger and more open, and it allows for way more exploration and provides a much more detailed and immersive experience. The new locations are larger, much more designed, they feel much more alive, less like set pieces and more like real worlds. And I know that a lot of people are gonna say something, but this is a game that is made for picky gamers. But the technical craftsmanship and storytelling prowess actually make it one of those games that obviously a lot of people are gonna say doesn't do the most groundbreaking things, but if we're real, it does everything a lot better than a lot of other games. Requiem is a big highlight, and in terms of its graphical beauty and storytelling nuances, I think it stands out in what was a really great year for video games altogether. Maybe it wasn't the top game, but it is still one of the best games of the year and one of my favorites. Next up, we've got Lies of P. Now, I know you are all probably expecting Baldur's Gate 3, which is, by the way, another amazing game from 2023. And yes, it's something I could probably swap out with this game if I were gonna make it a top 20 list rather than my favorite game of each year. But this was easily my favorite game of 2023. If you follow the channel for any amount of time, I'm sure you know how much I love From Software, how much I love Souls games. But Lies of P takes that formula and injects it with a fresh dose of creativity and charm. The unique setting, inspired by the old horror tales of Pinocchio, adds a really interesting twist to the familiar mechanics, making the game feel both nostalgic and innovative. The world of Lies of P is meticulously crafted, with every little detail contributing to this experience that's both eerie and captivating. The environments are beautifully bleak, filled with dark corners and hidden secrets that keep you needing more and more to explore. The combat is tightly woven to both Soulsborne fans and newcomers, offering a satisfying balance of challenge and reward. One of the standout features is its storytelling. You have a game that blends a children's fairy tale with a mature, gritty narrative so well that the old story of Pinocchio is reimagined in a way that makes you not look at a wooden puppet the same after. The atmospheric exploration really keeps you invested in this creepy, scary, but fascinating world. This isn't just a tribute to From Software. It's a standout title that deserves recognition for its originality and its depth. A must-play for anybody into this kind of thing. And finally, we've got Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. So this is a surprising hit because, let's be real, the first Space Marine game was great, but this really elevates everything. This game captures the brutal, chaotic essence of the Warhammer universe perfectly. You play as a Space Marine who's literally mowing down mobs of enemies in ridiculously satisfying ways with this heavy weapon arsenal. The gameplay loop is just pure adrenaline. Whether you're fighting against swarms of tyrants or facing off against otherworldly horrors, the action never really lets up. One of the best things about this game is its balance between over-the-top combat and strategic depth. It's not just a mindless shooter, just fight what you might think. You need to make real tactical decisions on the fly. You need to adapt your strategies because the enemies that are flying at you are coming in all different forms. The variety in enemy design keeps the gameplay fresh, and the level design encourages both brute force and clever planning. Visually, Space Marine 2 is impressive in terms of the same technical prowess as its predecessor, but it really has a lot more detail, and a lot more detail in the environments as well. The characters are massive. Everything about it feels epic. And on top of that, the soundtrack and voice acting, they're top-notch, really driving home the intensity of the game. This isn't just a great Warhammer game. It's a remarkable action game that can stand on its own, even without the franchise attached. A lot of people would play this game without knowing what Warhammer is, and I think they would still love it. If you're into fast-paced, intense, and rewarding shooters, Space Marine 2 is not one you want to miss.